So we are doing a live today on becoming an ally to the BIPOC community nursing edition. So we've had questions from some fellow nurses who would like to become allies to the BIPOC community as they understand some of or understand or want to better understand some of the struggles that we go through. So we thought we'd do a live to talk about it. And tap the screen, y'all. Like and share. Tap the screen.
Thank y'all for doing that. So, first and foremost, I guess a lot of the issues that we have in the BIPOC community is that there's a lot of distrust amongst our colleagues. And when it comes to the distrust amongst our colleagues, it's because of the fact that we have been made to feel a certain kind of way, that we can't come and do our jobs and do it effectively without someone wanting to go tattle or find something wrong or criticize what we do. And this whole topic actually was a spinoff of last week's topic where we had two CRNAs who were African American, um, one African technically, one African American male CRNAs who had talked about their experiences as men, as Black men in the nursing profession, and how they have to kind of cower themselves down or stand in a certain position so they don't look as, what's the word, intimidating, maybe? I don't know. I've never even heard of the angry Black man notion. I've never heard of that. Of course, we always hear about the angry Black woman, but not man. So I'm like, wow. So it was really, empowering to hear like what they go through, because I'm kind of like, y'all go through that. So because they have those issues, and of course, as Black women, we have some of the same issues. We just want to kind of talk about um, what it is that we can do, as what our allies can do to say, okay, you know what, let us get to know you all a bit better in terms of making sure that we um, basically in that, so that we can actually have a more homogeneous workplace. That's kind of how I think of it. Hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
So thank y'all for the likes. I appreciate y'all. So you want to start? Those are nice. Okay. Thank y'all for the likes. So anybody have any input? Let us know. So on yours, how many people guess can you add? Does it even say at the bottom, the pink and blue person?
Yes. It's a pink person. It says guess.
Does it allow you, does it tell you how many places you have? Like two people, or
Oh, it
anyway.
just I only see two.
Okay, that's fine. A new account will probably be that way. Anyway, anything that you all want to add, in terms of what can we do for people who are
Mhm.
non-BIPOC, so they are not ethnic minorities. What can they do to make us feel more welcomed? Is that another way to say it?
I
More
think
welcomed in the workplace? Um, I don't know. Is that, what are y'all thoughts? What can be done? I mean, I guess first we need to have the problems, talk about the problems, and then the solutions.
mhm. I
Maybe.
agree. I was thinking start off with open communication and listen and validate. So a lot of times when we start talking about race, people get uncomfortable. And that's kind of regardless of their, it's just one of those topics that people tend to be highly sensitive about. So I think having candid conversations about it, listening and validating, and if you hear a member of the BIPOC community say they feel like they're experiencing discrimination or racism, don't just blow it off because they said that. They didn't say that because they were bored. That's how they feel. And if you're not a member of the BIPOC community or you haven't experienced that, your outlook from the outside looking in would look very different than their perception of that situation.
Very true. I'm trying to see how we can share this to people. Okay. Very true. So anyway, we're just gonna want to expand on that. So communication is one thing. Number two is, I would say, not invalidate our experiences. I have had so many situations where people will say, well, that wasn't probably because of your race, it was because of, and they'll say X, Y, and Z. Like, do not come and invalidate a ethnic minority's experience just because it's not experience that you have had. And unless you know what it's like to be part of that community, a BIPOC community, you really can't dictate what does and doesn't go on because of the fact that you haven't had that experience or you've never seen it. There's so many times that I've seen people say, "Oh, I've never seen any type of racist acts or anything discriminatory acts or whatever happens to be. I've never seen that." Well, because your eyes are shut typically, and number two, it's probably you who's doing it. So either you are turning a blind eye to it, or you don't see it because you're the one who is participating in it. So my thing is, do not invalidate somebody's experience, because that is something that, especially on this app right here, people like to invalidate people's experiences and say, what I just said, like, okay, well, you can't do that because, it's not because of that. It's because you were new. It's because you look young. It's because you are, maybe they didn't like you as a nurse. It's because maybe this, that, and the other. Maybe it was short staffing. All these excuses that people give as to why they are okay with treating said people in certain kind of ways.
Totally agree. And also, I think understanding some history would kind of help you to understand why we feel the way we feel about certain things. Um, there was a video we shared within the last few days where there was some medical experimentation done illegally on Black people, and I mean it happened several times. We talk about this one incident, and thinking about the distrust of the BIPOC community in the healthcare system, and seeing some of the biases towards BIPOC patients. And if you see that and you truly want to be an ally, check the person that's doing that, because you can see it just like we can see it. And to allow it to go on, is being part of the problem. So with the patients, with the staff, also, I would also say understand your own bias. Sometimes I think people have,
Mm-hmm. A big one.
and I don't think they even realize it's a bias, because maybe where you're from or how you grew up, it was normal. So you don't even realize that it's actually a bias. You just think that this is how it is. And it's either not or it shouldn't be. But it's the norm maybe in the town where you are. So I think that could be an issue too, is just not being culturally competent and really just understanding um, cultural norms, cultural differences, and understanding that some of these sly remarks and things like that that are made are not appropriate. And just because you grew up that way doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean that it's going to make someone else of um, a different race, culture, etc., comfortable with you saying that, or doing those things.
What about, to piggyback off of that, implicit bias? So, implicit bias is where we do or say things, or we govern ourselves in a way that we really are not cognizant. It's not intentional, basically, of what we're doing to people. That kind of piggybacks off of like maybe how you were brought up, or I did a video recently on covert bullying, nurse bullying, and it kind of ties into that. There's sometimes you'll do things, or that's more intentional but passive aggressive, I guess, but there's sometimes you do things that you're like, okay, I didn't realize that I was being, I wasn't being sensitive, shall I say, to whatever's going on with the people, with the oh, I thought I saw something sensitive to that population of people. So I also think about the fact of, what about the scenario where you have patients who are, what's the word I'm looking for? When they are, let's say a patient says, I, I don't want a such and such nurse, ethnic minority nurse. What do we do then? Like, and then the nurse, the said charge nurse, or whoever can make a change, go ahead and makes that change and give them the kind of patient, the nurse that they want to have. I've seen that time. That's actually happened to me a few times. So where you get fired, we call fired, get fired because they don't want a Black nurse.
I've seen that too. It was actually an incident at it's actually one of the last places I was staffed, um, where the nurse manager, it was a patient And mind you, this was like an inner city urban area. So the hospital was mostly Black patients. And this patient was from out of town. And somehow he ended up there. And he said he didn't want a Black nurse, but 95% of the nurses there were Black. There were literally like one or two nurses that were not. And the nurse manager rigged, and he was there for, he had patients that are difficult. It seemed like even if it's a day, it just seemed like they're there so long. But but I'm like, God, you still here? But he was there. He had to be there probably at least 2 weeks, which in hospital time, that's a while. And the family was nasty. He was nasty, and the nurse manager made the schedule so that he would only get those nurses and change their schedules so that they could be his nurse the vast majority of the time, because it couldn't be his nurse 100% of the time because there just weren't enough to go around. And he would always give the Black nurses a hard time. You let him tell it. We always gave the wrong medication. It was always a threatening of a lawsuit, etc. And the nurse manager ended up getting fired for accommodating his request, which I was actually surprised because this hospital used to kiss patients, but they could do no wrong. Even if the patient spit in your face, they could do no wrong. So I was actually surprised that they fired her, but I felt like that was a good move because I feel like they should have fired the patient. Like if you don't want the staff that works here to care for you because of reasons of racism, then you should leave. You should
Mm-hmm.
leave. Just like you came in here, just not in jail. You can leave anytime. Here, sign. But you don't even got to sign. Here, look, let's pull an IV. Bye.
The AMA, the
Yeah.
AMA. Oh yeah, that's exactly right. Secret Taurus, how are you doing tonight, this afternoon? Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you.
My Go ahead.
I
What
was
you
just
gonna
saying, good to see your tour's back.
My scenario was I was a new nurse, probably about a year, not even a year yet. I just got off orientation. That's what happened. I had just got off orientation. I was about 4 or 5 months out of nursing school, and the patient was just like, oh, I don't. And the way our ratio was 1 to 6. If you didn't have 7 patients, you only had one nurse on the floor. I learned after that job, you always want a job with 2 nurses on the floor. I'm gonna do a video on that. But anyway, so it was only one, just me, right? So there was nobody else. And they basically said, well, I don't do Black people, is what she said. She had a certain GYN procedures on a PCA, whole nine. And at this point, 4 months out of school, I had already had enough. 4 months out of school. And I said, okay, then. So I said, well, if I can't do your assessment, then you won't get any pain meds. Have a good night. And I went and documented everything on the computer, and that was it. I said, there's not going to be another nurse here until 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:15, whenever, change the shift, 6:45 in the morning. So about 2 o'clock in the morning, she calls out. She said, is it still on you out there? I said, it sure is. And I documented every 2 hours that patient refused patient care due to nurse's race. I put that in my documentation. And I called the physician and let the physician know as well that your patient is not getting any care because she's refused me because I'm the only, nurse here and happen to be Black. And so anyway, once that happened to about 2:30 in the morning, her call light, she puts her call light and she says, I'm in pain. And I said, I can't do nothing for you. I said, you refused my care. You won't let me do a head to toe assessment. And I will not give any pain medications unless I have baseline vital signs in an assessment. I won't. I don't care what you've got going on because you refuse this. And she said, okay, then I'll wait till in the morning. I said, okay, then. I documented that whole, interaction, put it in the chart, and kept it moving. By 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I guess the pain was unbearable because that thing was going off. That pump, I just unplugged the pump because there's no point of that thing keep on beeping, knowing that I can't change it. And so I said, she said, there's nothing else in this pump. I said, you hear it beeping, don't you? I said, it's because it's empty. I can and I will not give you more morphine via PCA without doing an assessment and without doing her meds, or her vital signs. And as a result of that, because of her pain, it got so bad. She said, I need my pain medication. And I guess I have no choice. I said, it's up to you. See, it was no sweat off of me. It was no sweat off. I didn't even care. I'm like, okay, at this point in time, 4 months in, I didn't even care no more. I said, okay, then, have a good night. Document it. Y'all can let me go because y'all not gonna sit here and mistreat me. because of the fact that you don't want me to take care of you because you don't like a certain race. Okay, if somebody gonna give me my medication, as long as you're not mistreating me and you gonna take care of me, I don't care what you look like. I don't. So anyway, like I said, about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, she got her. I changed everything. I got her I got her assessment done, and I did her vital signs. And then after that, what I end up doing is documenting that whole situation. And then she was just like, and I still don't like black people after I get her all that. I said, that's your problem, not mine. I said, you're not hurting me. You sat there and suffered the entire night. I said, you're the ignorant one. You suffered the entire night in pain. Now it's going to take a good minute for your pain to be under control because now you are her a 20 out of 10, according to her, in pain. So you hurt yourself. You didn't hurt me. And they always thinking they hurting you when they sit there and do these slanderous acts or remarks. Like maybe, in that case, you're not hurting me. You one less patient I got to take. I had 6 patients. Because of her, I only had 5 to take care of that night until she needed something. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, I'm not fooling with y'all with this stuff. And so anyway, she was a terrible patient, but I did, like I said, medicated her and everything. She was fine after the fact. But okay, by the time 6 o'clock in the morning come, her pain was still like at an 8. Why? Because she spent the entire night in pain because she wanted to let her antics get in the way of her getting pain relief. Who does that? I'm like, get me out of this pain. I may feel how I feel about somebody, but you would never know it. Unless you're doing something that's really suspicious or crazy, or, you would never know it. So, I mean, that's my real life situation where I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so I told the manager about that the next day because I already knew this was going to be a big ordeal. When she reported me to management for not caring for her. And that's the reason why your documentation is important. I called the physician several times. That was documented and all that. And you know who the manager sided with? The patient. Well, I can't make somebody. She was in her right mind. I cannot make her let me do an assessment. So guess who got wrote up for that? I did. Even though it's documented, everything that was said, I never said I didn't want her to be my nurse. Okay, well then why would I document this the whole night, calling the physician that come up with this whole story? See, that was her way of trying to like get me back. And so the nurse, well, I can't say what the nurse's name was. Never mind. I was going to say what the nurse manager was. We called her just say her initials of her name were MF, and that's what we called her. Her first and last name initials were MF, and we call her that. I said that's that MF. Like she was definitely that. The MF and B. I called her all kinds of stuff because it's like, okay, you up here siding with this lady, and you weren't even here last night. And do you not? Okay, so I took care of all the other 5 patients, but I didn't take care of her. Why would I do that? Like, make it make sense. I would not purposely not see a patient because I didn't want to take care of her. She just didn't want to take care of me. What did you say for that to take place? Merce says most of the time racism always backfire. It sure does. It does. But sometimes when they get there, they're people in cahoots. They will sit there and then try to, it kind of comes back on us too. Like I said, I got wrote up for something that I did right. I cannot make a patient let me do their assessment. I can't.
It's disgusting.
You said, of course, she saw it with her. Yep. Well, the thing you said, it's time to go at that point. So keep in mind, Secret Tourist, I had only been there for 4 months. I was a new grad. And back then, it was really pushed upon you that as a new grad, you stayed put for that first year. This is back in 2004. So back then, now people as a new grad will come and be gone in 90 days. But back then, it was really pushed upon you to stay for that whole year. I was only 4 to 5 months. I think I just got out of orientation. So I was probably about 5 months in to my job. So I did stay there to that year. I stayed there for a year. Yes. So to answer both your questions, I stayed there for the entire year. And on my last day, I called in. Mm-hmm. At that point, I didn't even care. At my last day, I didn't even care. So I made it for the most part of a year. But I called in. And then after that, guess what happened after all that? With that situation and a few other situations that happened at this hospital, I was deemed they called me and said that I needed anger management. So they was trying to set me up with anger management classes because they felt like why are you so angry? What's wrong? Like, where do you get this from? You all are mistreating me and you don't expect me to have any kind of emotion behind it? Like, really? So I had, there's anger management issues. I had issues with interracial couples where the patient, I would do OB nursing. So the patient was white, the dad was black, and he was flirting with every nurse on that floor, the black nurses on the floor. Well, the patient, his girlfriend, baby mama, was like, told the nursery nurse, I don't want that nurse talking about me. And at this point in time, I was still in orientation because I don't know what it is about her. I don't know what it's about her, but it's something about her I don't like. My preceptor, who was white, says you need to go in and make friends with that patient. I said, no, ma'am, I will not. I said, I can't help it that her baby daddy she need to check him, not me. I said, he up here making eyes, trying to make passes at every female that come in here. If she has insecurity issues, that's her. That's not me. I'm not making friends with nobody. Guess who got wrote up? Me.
On what
I got
basis?
wrote up. Huh?
Wrote up for what? What was the reason?
Because I did not. So it's called service recovery. So, service recovery is when something was done wrong and you have to, I'm trying to say, you have to
Nice. Mm-hmm.
yeah, make up for it, basically. And I refused to do it. That's where I learned how to stand up for myself. I said, you know what, y'all can go ahead and let me. And they didn't let me go. And the problem this is another thing. So I had a grant to go to school, right? They gave me a scholarship grant, whatever you want to call it, to go to school. And I had to work at this facility for 2 years. You see what I'm saying? So I was also trapped
Uh,
by that money too. So even though I was going through all of this anyway, hey, Nurse April, even though I was going through all of this anyway, the problem was that I was still, I'm a new nurse, right? Single parent, 2 girls, 24 years old. I want to say I was 24, 26, something like that years old. Okay. I went from making 5.15 an hour to 18.11 an hour. And back then, 18.11 was like, was rich back then. Okay. So we talking about when minimum wage was like 4.25 or 5.15 and I'm making 18.11. I'm doing very good. You think I can give that up and then have to pay that scholarship that I got back? I can't afford to do that. So a lot of times we have to, unfortunately, I find myself having to, like, as Randy and Peter said last week, I have to dumb myself down, try to, kind of tone down who I am or whatever, just to be able to keep my job so I could go and go to work. And that would hurt me. That mentally, that impacted me negatively. And as a result of that, yeah, I only lasted a year at that hospital. And to put it out there, it was an HCA hospital. I won't call the name, but HCA is everywhere. It was an HCA hospital. And if y'all know anything about HCA, that is a corporation of hospitals that kind of do people wrong anyway, no matter what you look like. Because it's literally like one of the biggest corporations, hospital corporations in America. That's why they call it Hospital Corporation of America. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm saying. Let me see what you says. Real was leadership mostly white? Yes, they were. Yes, they were. They were. Keep in mind, I live in an area where I live near Nashville, and so in Nashville, you're not going to see a pocket, um, a pocket of black nurses together. Like if you see a black nurse somewhere, you go like, "Oh my gosh, that's my cousin," and you automatically link up because you don't know him from Adam, but you automatically link up because there's somebody there who looks like you. That's how rare. And I'm an OB, so as an OB nurse, you're not gonna see a lot of us in OB. That could be by design and by default. Okay, here in the South, unless you live in Atlanta, so let's take out those large cities that have a population of minorities: Atlanta, Jacksonville, Florida. Um, yeah, all these places, not necessarily in the South, but anywhere, Detroit, Baltimore, Chicago, Philly, I can go on and on. All those places that have pockets of minorities like that, yeah, y'all gonna see them everywhere. But places like where I live at here, we don't see them everywhere. So when you find one, you're like, oh, let me hook up with her. We about to, we about to kick it. Um, and that's kind of how it was. So it's not like I had any allies that was even who looked like me who could say, and so, okay, you know what? Let me tell you how to navigate this better. Didn't have nobody like that. You see, you worked at HCA for 10 years. Ooh, you did good. You did good because I didn't make it. I made it at 2 years. Now the years have passed, would you say it was worth your mental well-being? Good question. You know what? I'm gonna be honest with you, Secret Tours. I think for me, it was a teaching moment about how I have to move in nursing. I always refer to on my channel how I'm on my personal page how, I play chess while others play checkers. I always say that because of the fact I've learned how I have to move. And when you learn how you have to move, you move in a way that you're kind of like, you know what can I do to minimize the focus on me and do my job and go home? That is the reason why we as minority nurses will say, we just come in here to do our job and
Mm,
go home
that's it.
because of what I just described. So, and that's to protect our mental health. Because if I came in here, every time you look up and you said, oh, she's just she's an angry black woman. Who wants to hear that every single shift that she worked? Because of the fact that she has boundaries or he has boundaries, or because they have a deeper voice, or because they're loud or boisterous or whatever, because they're direct and to the point. That makes them all these negative things. So I would say, I don't know, I say if it's worth it. Yes and no. What makes it worth it is because, everything's either a blessing or a lesson. And that was a lesson for me to know how I needed to move about these nursing streets, as I call it. And as a result of that, how I need to move so that I can keep myself out of somebody's HR. And that's the story for another day. How I went to HR. I had to call was it EOC or EEOC? EEOC.
OC, yeah.
I had to call them on one of the jobs. Only lasted 6 months. That was the job after that. Matter of fact, um, so it only lasted 6 months because of racist issues, because of the fact that I was trying to go back to school to get an advanced degree, and they didn't want me to get my degree, but yet all the secretaries and techs could go to school to get their degree, but I couldn't get mine. Oh, we're not going to be able to accommodate your clinical schedule. I wasn't doing clinicals for another 3 years, and I'm up here doing my classes online, where you got the white techs taking off on certain days of the week so they can go to school. Like, when I tell you how they treat us is so bad to keep us down. So we have to change and move and change jobs just so that we can kind of elevate ourselves. And so we have to dumb ourselves down. Like I said, to hear the men say that last week, I'm kind of like, y'all got to do this too. I honestly thought, to be honest with you, that black men had it better than we do. I honestly thought that just because they're a man.
I still do think they do. I think some of it's perceptional because while I think being a member of the BIPOC community, when you're in a predominant space where people don't look like you, there's going to be some level of feeling like you have to filter yourself. But
Yes.
where men in nursing have it, I'm just particularly talking about nursing, have it easier is because they, at least from my experience, aren't involved in all the
Right.
and all the fighting. So they don't have that to deal with. So if you take a BIPOC female, for instance, you got all of this, and this it would drives me insane about nursing. You have all of that on top of the racism, on top of dealing with the public, the patients, and whatever their issues are. At least with the men, I don't think that women come for them the same way they come for another female. Or at least that's my experience. They don't, and I don't know, maybe it's because, there may be some women may feel, a certain level of submission to some degree, but I just don't see that snarkiness as much with men as women do to each other. So I think that's one check mark off the down. I think it's just that might be the only thing. But I think in that regard, and even men in other female dominated industries such as education, I notice male educators that I know, they don't deal with some of the catty BS that goes on. And I also noticed in the educational realm, I think I actually read this somewhere as well, that males are often offered leadership roles more often
Mm-hmm.
women, despite it being a female dominated profession. So even though they are BIPOC, I think that's like when you go down the check boxes of all of the messed up stuff that we gotta go through. I think that's the one box that they don't have a check mark in. Just that one though. Just that
And I
one.
hang with them. I hang with like these women is too much for me. So I hang with the men. I'm like, let me go over here with the men's side. I mean, we don't have many men in OB, but anytime I did get floated to another floor and I found a male nurse who was willing to just kind of let me hang with them, I'm sitting with you. Like we go off to our corner and we whatever you want to talk about is fine. Sports, whatever, your wife, whatever you want to talk about is fine because I cannot deal with this cattiness over here. They up here planning a wedding and somebody coding down the hall. You see what I'm saying? Like that's the mess that I'll be dealing with. Like, okay, y'all planning a wedding, trying to find dresses and somebody down here coding. So you said, would you have changed anything that you have done or didn't do in the past? Are we speaking specifically to those situations that I talked about, or just nursing in general? Secret Taurus, if you're still here, which one are we talking about? In general, or when it comes to that issue that I just talked about? Nurse April says, I think that's true with men. They don't get involved in drama. Yep, they don't. They don't. Most of them don't. Most of them don't. And they're like, no, y'all can
Yeah.
have that.
When you're a female and you don't get involved, you're mean, you're unapproachable,
Yes.
you're everything. But it's like, how about I just don't want to be bothered? Like I just don't. I just don't want to be bothered. And I remember one time in certain things I'll just never understand. Certain things I feel like, why is this even a conversation? Like, why are we even talking about this? So one time I was getting a report from another nurse, and I came in, and she happened to not be a BIPOC nurse, and she's telling me all this craziness about the patient. So I'm sitting there, I'm writing it, and I may have had facial expressions. She goes and reports to nurse manager, tells nurse manager she doesn't like my face. The nurse manager pulls me in the office, and I said, why'd you pull me in the office? You pulled me in here to tell me that somebody said that they don't like my face? Really?
Yep, that sounds right.
But why is this even? I was annoyed. And then my thinking is, you think that this is a good idea to have this conversation. Like, why? Like, I would just, as a former manager, didn't I want to manage long? I would just shut that down. Like, well, that's a personal problem. Next. Like, I'm not even getting involved with the paperwork for that. I mean, that's, but this the kind of cattiness that you deal with. Like, I don't care what your face look like. You're a nurse. You're taking this assignment. I'm punching out.
Mm-hmm.
You got. I don't care what you look like. Take these patients. Bye.
She says, did you think it is harder for women of the BIPOC now trying to get into nursing and stay in nursing?
I don't
Um,
necessarily know, but that's based
I
on
can
my.
speak. I can speak on the education part of it, for sure, because I'm a nurse educator, primarily. So I would have to say yes. I would have to say that it's harder for minorities to get, and this is, I wouldn't even say now. This has always been this way. That it's always harder for just minorities in general. But yes, women, this is minorities in general. It's harder for us to get into the programs, and a lot of reasons why it's hard for us to get into the programs is because the criteria that they have set forth, and a lot of us don't have the same. I don't. Have you ever seen those, Dr. Ray? Seen those like things talking about equality versus what is it? What is it? It's equality versus. It's basically saying where
is an
you can
opportunity.
both get to the same deadline, to the same destination, but it shows like, but it's not. You don't have the equal access.
Oh, yeah, the
It's,
guy, and he's trying to look over the fence.
yes,
That
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Whatever that's called. So I feel like we don't have the same, we have barriers. Let's just say that. We have barriers that makes it harder. And some of it's by design, and some of it's by default. Some of it we do to ourselves. Some of it's due to generational, the fact that sometimes we're first generation and we don't have people in our corner to help support and push us through because we didn't have nobody before us do it. So when we're the first one to do something, it's harder for us. But also due to, keep in mind, nursing school was built off of the Florence Nightingale narrative. And Florence Nightingale was a racist, a known racist. And if we are doing everything by Florence's model, then of course they're gonna have people teaching according to her model. We're gonna make it harder for minority women, or just BIPOC in general, to get into nursing. So yeah, I think it's true in terms of getting into nursing and staying in nursing. I would say absolutely so. I say because of what we're talking about today. Because when you go in, you're considered to be the angry black woman. When you say to yourself, "Oh, you're antisocial and you're mean," you're not a team player because of the fact that you don't want to join in on the gossip about the other nurse that they was just so many best friends with. I'm like, okay, wait. I sit there and watch people. I sit there and watch people. I say, okay, you up here talking about her right now. I'm saying this to myself. You talking about her, but yet y'all was hanging out just yesterday. She didn't want you to tell that business of hers. Like I can see how y'all move and y'all messy. I don't deal with messy people. So I'm gonna stay to myself. Or me and Chad down the hall. We gonna sit with Chad down the hall because he ain't trying to engage with this messiness that y'all trying to. We talking about football over here or whatever we talking about, or his wife or girlfriend or whatever they trying to do. I don't have time for that. So I think staying in nursing, yes. And it also depends on where you live. Again, we're talking about, you think about the areas in which you have a whole lot of minorities, it may not be as hard for you. But in places like here in Nashville, it's harder for us because of the fact that there are not a lot of us, unless you in med surge. They will allow us to go to med surge. And that is, I always say med surge. Now, people are going to down me on this, but med surge to healthcare or for nurses is like McDonald's to the workforce. And so it's the entry level. McDonald's, not necessarily McDonald's, but any kind of job like that is entry level into the workforce. When we're 16, 17 years old, if we go get a job, where do we go? Some type of fast food establishment, right? Typically, not all of us, but some of us do. So that's entry into the workforce. Med surge is entry into healthcare. And so you will find us there. But the thing is, it's very hard to get out of those roles once you're in it, because a lot of times these hospitals will trap you. Oh, well, we can't let you go work in ICU because we're short staffed here, and your manager may not even release you. And that's how they can kind of trap you like that. You have to quit and come back, or quit and go find another job. So yeah, I think it's harder for us in terms of getting in school and staying. You have to stay in nursing because this is what you really want to do, and sometimes you end up being jaded as a result of that.
Yeah, I can relate to that. From my experience, I would say it's relative to me. I think some of the barriers in terms of Black people getting into nursing, from what I've seen in an area where there's a good amount of us in this area, is a lot of times the schools where our children tend to go in ethnic communities aren't that great. So then when you get to college, you're a weak student.
Mm-hmm.
And add to that, colleges, universities, whatever you want to call them, a lot of them water down the curriculum as it is. So you come from a poor school, the college is, half-assing you, and then you try to get into nursing school. I think that you have to kind of understand how to play the game and be vigilant about it. But would I say that because you're Black, you can't do it? No. And I think that in nursing, like with most things, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. I mean, that's just my take from where I sit. But um, those barriers can hold you back. So if you went to a poor high school and maybe your reading and writing comprehension skills are low, you're going to have to get those building blocks in order to move forward. So, that could be, like Dr. P said, could be by design, could be by default. Because when you live in poor areas or poor areas, you're going to have poor schools.
True.
That's, you're not going to be in the middle of a ghetto and have the top school in all of whatever, unless all of whatever is not that great to begin with. But you understand what I'm saying. So if you come from a poor area, that's going to be your foundation. So you're going to have to kind of fight against those things. And and typically in poor areas, you're going to have limited resources, and you're also likely going to have other things that could be a barrier, like violence, crime.
Mm.
So maybe you want to study, maybe you can't study in your house. Maybe you got issues at home. Maybe you need to go to the library, but you got to hurry up back home because it's getting dark. So you could think, things like that, but that could make it harder. But if it's something you want to do, it's definitely attainable. You just have to know. You just have to know how to play the hand you're dealt. And also going into it as someone who came from a lower socioeconomic area, I knew that my high school was okay. I hated high school, so I could have probably went anywhere and wouldn't have really thought much of it. But it was decent. But when I got to college, I knew that I was going to have to work way harder than what I had been working before. And I think you also have to find something that's going to motivate you, and you're going to have to find some discipline in order to execute. And that's pretty much with anything you want to do. It doesn't, we're happy to talk about nursing, but I think that's going to go with anything significant that you want in your life.
Secret Taurus says, "Oh, I most certainly agree. Unless they play on the other team, then they can be as catty as the women. You know what? You know every line. Sometimes they more catty than the other women. The other team, the ones who do play on the other team, they be more catty than the women. And sometimes they keep the drama going. They are the drama. You know that
Yeah.
that sound. They are the drama. So like yeah, they keep the women going. So you're right about that. They're entertaining to me. But yeah, and sometimes, it is what it is. But you said nope, it's the worst. We don't get involved in drama, but our knowledge is always questioned. Yes.
And
Yes.
for
That oh
houses,
I got
and
stories that
and
yeah.
right in your face, or want to piggyback and check behind you, and I'm like, well, you can do it. Like so many stories. You're not hurting my feelings. Like, and the way I see it is, I feel like patients that don't want minority nurses, just say that, because I don't want you either. So that's the point I'm at in my career now. Like I'll fire the patients. Like whatever. I'm too old. I'm too burned out. But at this point, bye. Because you're not hurting my feelings. One less. That's where I'm in my career right now. One less. Okay, you don't want me. I don't want you either. Bye. It's a line. It's a line. Move on. Next. 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 And it's a shame, but after a while, you just get tired of it. And I've had experiences where even as an MP, people will question things that I do and go back and ask someone else that looks different from me. And I even asked the patient one time, I said, well, would you rather see that provider? Just say it if that's what you want. Like, you're not hurting my feelings. I would rather you say it. You're more comfortable with who you get, and I can go take a break. But we don't have to. We really don't. We don't have to do this. But it's like I think that, and this goes back to what I say about checking biases and people not realize what they're doing is rude. That is rude, but maybe in their mind they feel like if they say no, I'd rather have a different provider because of race, they feel like that would be rude. When actually the passive aggressive is just as rude. If you don't like me because I'm black, then just say that because you're showing it. So just be direct, just say it, and we can just move on. Because either way, to pretend like the elephant isn't in the room when you're shining the light on it, just say what you gotta say and let's move on. I can go on and live in my life because that's what's gonna happen anyway, and you can
Right.
go on. Especially if you're gonna sit and question and double check and not believe what I'm telling you, then get what you want.
Real says, I've always wondered why I always saw all the new black nurses in med surg, no other special. Yep. I mean, that may not be everywhere, but I mean, for the most part, you're going to find them in med surg. And then when they decide that they want to do something else, then they have a hard time doing so because they are stuck. Hey, Katina, how are you doing? Hey, Sweet Pea, how are you?
Hey, y'all.
I hadn't seen y'all, either one of y'all in a minute. How y'all been? I'm not on here much either, but but how y'all been? So, but yeah, it's definitely like that. I wanted to piggyback up what you said earlier about the housing and things like that where you live at. That's the whole capitalistic environment we live in because you have to keep in mind people who pay more taxes
Yep.
get better the money. People who pay more taxes, the government puts more money back into those areas. So if you're living in the hood, it's all projects. No one is, you're not paying any taxes. You're the one who's receiving all the benefits. So therefore, the government is not putting back money into your schools, into your infrastructure, to your streets, highways. They're not giving you the money for the resources, the textbooks that you need, the computers that you need, anything like that. You getting free lunch or reduced lunch, but that's probably free. But that's about it. And so therefore your buildings are dilapidated. The buses are breaking down. The bus drivers don't even show up to come to pick the child up, so they can't get to school. It keeps going and going and going, and all that contributes to the poor quality education that we get when we live in those areas. And then we want to try to go against the grain and go to college, and
Mm-hmm.
then you try to go to a school, and then you realize you thinking you done made all A's because you thinking you smart and you done did something. Come to realize you didn't even know the basics and so you do have to fight tooth and nail to get to where you need to be. You said I'm doing good. It's great to get. Yes, thank you for joining us over here. Thank y'all for joining us on our new
Count.
platform. This is our first night on our new platform, so thank y'all for joining us over here. So
And
go ahead.
with that, realize that it's a perpetual cycle because like I said, I grew up in areas like that, and what ends up happening is you have broken systems, you have broken families, you have mass incarceration, you have drugs, you have violence, and that's what the children are going to see. That's what you're going to grow up to see. Then let's just say you're, one of the ones who make up your mind you want to get out of that. You're gonna have to fight tooth and nail. But because it's like a whole systematic thing, most people feed back into that same system. So the schools are broken. But another thing that I learned after living in a low socioeconomic area, going to a more expensive area at one point, is that parents in those high tax bracket areas, they advocate at those schools. So not only are their tax dollars speaking for them, but those parents don't play. Mm-hmm. Any little thing that were going at my daughter's school, I'm getting emails, phone calls. I mean, and some stuff that I knew when it would happen, I knew I didn't even have to say nothing. I said, "Oh, the parents are going up there," and before I could even get off from work, it was straightened out.
It was straightened out. Yep.
City schools, I had family that work in those schools. I went to those schools. It was a tiny bit better then, but it's terrible. And what another thing is, not only is it broken because they're in poor areas, they don't have resources, but there's no one advocating for the students because the parents are ignorant because they grew up in schools. So they don't necessarily value education because it wasn't, this is all they know. And I had a patient one time, it was a girl with 6 of them. It was a woman. She had 6 kids, and they lived in the surrounding projects. They came in because one of the children had strep throat. So she brought in the girl with the strep throat, but everybody else was fine. I'm like, well, and they weren't even being seen. She didn't even register them to be seen because sometimes they'll bring one in and say, "Well, test everybody." No, she
Yeah.
didn't even register them to be seen. So I'm like, well, why are other people here? She was like, "Oh, they ain't go to school today." I said, "Oh, school closed? No, school ain't closed. She just ain't take the kids to school."
That's how they do.
And I'm like, it's right up the street. Why you didn't send out the kids to school? Mm-hmm. Because they don't value that. Whereas, and it was probably because that's a similar situation to what she grew up in. That's probably what she sees in her neighborhood. So when that's all you see and that's all you know, it feeds into that cycle. So for those of us who are trying to do things, whether it's nursing or whatever it is, to get out of that, our lens is going to look a lot different. So when we show up in these predominantly white spaces, I know for me, it was a complete culture shock. When I got to college, I was like, what in the hell is this? So it was a total culture shock to me. I was like deer in the headlights shot. And, if you want to be an ally, just kind of understanding that a little bit, also understanding history and how we got to where we are, and not being afraid to have those types of conversations, because most BIPOC people probably assume that you don't want to talk about it anyway. So we're not necessarily going to bring it up to you. But if it's something that you really want to know, I would say don't be afraid to ask if you truly want to be an ally.
Secretary says, don't get you started on the Department of Education. You know what? I actually follow a lot of educators here on TikTok, like primary and secondary education. So your K through 12. I actually follow a lot of the K through 12 teachers on here because I want to see what's going on in early education. And you may say, what does that have to do with college? Because we get them. Yep. We get that to the facts. And so, that's how I was able to understand when I saw my students are coming in and they can't even write a complete sentence as a junior in college. You can't even write a sentence with a subject, a predicate. It got to have a verb in it, right? You got to have an action for you got to have a punctuation. They don't even know how to indent the first paragraph or the first sentence of your paragraph. When I see that coming into these people being juniors in college, I'm like, what is going on in the primary and secondary education, K through 12 education or pre-K through 12 education that lends itself to this? And then I realized we have the situation with the No Child Left Behind Act. They're adults now, and they've all grown up. And here we are. You have people who are entitled and non-productive, and they don't know what they don't know, and then they expect to be handed everything because they're also entitled. So that kind of plays into it too. So yeah, it's just the repetitive cycle in terms of the education system. And when I'm talking about education, I'm talking about United States wide. You're gonna have pockets that are better than others, obviously, but as a whole, our education system sucks. as an average in the United States. So again, you're going to have your affluent areas, whatever. Not talking about them. Averaging the good and the bad, you're going to that bell curve. How you have a bell curve and you have A, and then you have a B, C's, then a D. The bell curve is reversed on that, or maybe shifted, shall I say, where you have a few good school systems, and then it's going to be C, D, and F. That's how it's going to go on the bell curve like that, because our education system is terrible. So, something else I was going to say. Sweet Pea says, I'm ready for the break after this first. I understand it. I understand. We've been in school like that. We know it's rough. Nursing school, graduate school is rough. April says, I love listening and learning. Learning makes for it. Sure does. It sure does. And then you can have a better understanding about how you can kind of engage with your colleagues at work and say, you know what, I'm beginning to understand. And because when you come from a place, let me tell you something too. When you come from a place of truly wanting to know, people can tell the difference when you truly want to know to be educated versus when you, thank you, Adrian. How are you? Versus when you are just, what is what I'm looking for? So when you want to know because you want to be educated versus what's the other side of that? I can't think of it right now.
Just or just
Yeah,
yeah, that.
just you have ill intention, shall I say? Your motive is not there, and we know the difference. We know the difference. Like if you say, "Hey, girl, I heard you want to get your doctorate. Congratulations!" and we can kind of tell that it comes from a place of genuine, like, congratulations. But then when you say, "I heard you want to get your doctorate," oh, I would never do that. I don't see even why you would do something like that. Okay, well, that we know we know we're not to talk to you because, or your master's, or your whatever the next degree happens to be. We know not to talk to you because we know it doesn't come from a place of genuine concern or interest. Like, we have to know that it's where it comes from, because if you're just saying things to say things, we like, okay, we're going to shut that down, and we know, okay, mark them off the list. We can't talk to them. We can't trust them. I don't like people who are trying to find out things about me. Like, if you want to know something, just come ask. I heard da 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 da. Like, okay, well, who you been talking to, and why y'all talking about me? That's my thing. Who you been talking? Oh, well, just somebody around here. Oh, you know who you talk to. So who y'all talk? Why did my name come up? Because I'm not on a billboard nowhere. So why did my name come? And I'm PRN, so I ain't even here half the time. So why did my name come up? I don't like that. So know who you're talking to, and know that we begin to learn, and that's true of anybody in general. But we begin to learn who's truly vested in our best interest, and who is here just to antagonize, to demean, to learn what we know, and then mistreat us after the fact. So, hey, Adrian, thank you for joining us. He said, this is one of the things I love about HBCU, getting the kids up to speed. Well, you know what? Working at an HBCU, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, all HBCUs are not created equal. And until I find one that speaks that I'm sure they're out there. I know they're out there because we have some scholars who are coming out of these programs. But I'm telling you, some of these HBCUs are the bottom of the barrel.
Sorry.
What?
Oh, you're right. I saw think about the circus. Yes.
Yeah, the bottom of the barrel. I'm like, okay, where y'all get these kids from?
Oh
When
my
you
god.
have, and I'm not knocking HBCUs now. I'm not knocking HBCUs, but when my students are so focused on what they wear into class and not coming to learn, I have a problem with that. Our students come to class with spaghetti straps, back out, short dress, showing their bottoms. We had to have a dress code in my class. Listen, I had to stop people at the door and say, you got to go home. You up here trying to pull down your skirt. Like, we don't want to look at all that. We in nursing school. We're professional. We don't want to look at all that. They so concerned with that they're not concerned with what's going on up here. It's about what the aesthetic is out here. And I'm kind of like, that's not okay. So, Adrian, that's not true about all HBCUs. So I don't want to put that misnomer out there. I'm saying that some of them, just like in any other school, there's levels to this. And HBCUs are no different. HBCUs are great when you have vested students and vested educators, because they're going to put out a product. Okay, when you have that, you're good to go. But when you don't, you said, "I'm gonna look like who you want," and that's what my students come looking like. I turn them around so quick. I'm like, I don't know where you thought you was coming to, but you can go home with that. And you cannot come back. You gotta learn how to dress. You see, what in the 90s? Oh, it's a different time today. It's a different time today. Today, these students is lit. They lit. They were, one student told me, I'm supposed to be at, I don't know what event we called it, but I'm supposed to be on the yard today. We had class that day. I'm supposed to be on the yard today. They doing whatever they doing. I said, okay, I'm not stopping you. Go ahead and go out there to the yard. I'm gonna put you down as a 0 for today. You're not gonna let us out early for that. No, this is education. This is what you pay for. You didn't go to pay to be on the yard. If you come here to party, and then we have a graduation rate of 30%. Like what y'all advertising out here? So no, all HBCUs are not created equal. He said not at the bottom. You see the cup of your water? Yes, they are the bottom of the barrel. Bottom of the barrel. That crud at the bottom of the barrel. I don't know where we get that saying from. Probably from something to the south or something. But they at the bottom of the barrel. Some of these people I have, and they are not. When I say they're not educatable, that's not the word I want to use. But when I say they're not educatable, I'm meaning that they can be taught, but because of all the barriers that they have, and they've grown up to think that partying is what you need to be doing, and go live your life, enjoy the HBCU experience. Okay, yeah, I ain't knocking going to homecoming, going to the yard. I'm not knocking any of that, but you got to have a balance. You paying somebody's money being used to go for this education, and you want to go to a HBCU to say that you crossed, so you Greek now. That's the ultimate goal. You ain't got nobody's degree, but you Greek now. You proud of it? I have to tell my student, you proud of that? And you done failed out of nursing school? I said, that's not a flex. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm saying. Our mentality is all screwed up. We trying to go, we trying to party, we trying to do this, we trying to hook up with who are we trying to hook up to? We trying to, cross, whatever. You can cross in graduate school. But who you gotta pay, pay, how you gonna live? And their parents ain't teaching them that, because their parents are like, okay, yeah, here's your thousands of dollars to cross, but you can't give them $100 for a decent stethoscope. You can't help them get the scrubs they needed for nursing school. They don't even have a patch on their thing, holding it on with a paper clip. I mean, you can't even help get them the press on the patch. They press on, or you can take them and take them somewhere and they will stitch it on for you. Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You got a paper clip on this, but your hair, your makeup, and your nails is done. But yet you ain't bought not one textbook. I can't afford textbooks, but you come in here all Greeked out. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. So be glad that you went to school in the 90s, because the school, some of the HBCUs today pride themselves on the wrong thing. And unfortunately, that's that slave mentality that we as Black people have. And I will go ahead and say that a lot of us have slave mentality, because we up here thinking that that's where it's at. We just so happy to have a degree. We happy to have a degree. That's all that matters. You can't do nothing with your fashion design degree. You wouldn't got a degree in fashion design, but you ain't moving to Italy, Chicago, LA. You in Nashville, Tennessee. We don't do fashion here. That's my sister-in-law. Anyway, so but you working at Dillard's. You done paid all this money for a 4-year degree to be a representative at what you call it, a sales associate at Dillard's. Not knocking Dillard's, but you don't be needing no degrees for that. That's the kind of mentality that we have here. We pride ourselves on the wrong things, and I think that's the kind of issue that we have. You said you sound like a commitment issue part of the school and selection process. Yes, it is. That, and the thing is, education is a business too. So we need more people coming into education. So guess what our school was doing? I'm going, excuse me, you want to go to school? Here's $10,000 for you to go to school. A lot of times when we don't have to pay our way through something, this is the same as true with a car, shoes, and everything. My son just said to me, oh, I'm going to make sure the shoes that I buy, talking about the ones he buy with his money, he going to take care of them. Why? Because he had to work. But I said, oh, so you mean the ones that I bought you not going to take care of? But that's our mentality, though. So you give me $10,000 to go to school. So what if I fail a class? I didn't pay for it. Mm-hmm. Or 3. So what if I fail out of school altogether? I'm not paying for it. That's the mentality they have. So it's kind of like we have to do better with the selection process, like you said. So these young folks are weak. You said you partied and you worked 2 jobs and went to school. See?
And I think another thing goes back to what we said earlier about, particularly the BIPOC community. I was a first generation college grad. I was the first generation a lot of things, but one of those things was college graduate. And because you don't have that guidance, I somehow ended up in nursing. I started out as an accounting major, but I didn't have anyone to to guide me, because my mom, well, she did a trade, but no one else had gone to college before. So had I just for some reason decided on fashion degree or pottery, or something that isn't um, in demand in the marketplace, I'd have been stuck with that, just thinking, how all the little sayings will say, do what you really want to do what you love, something along those lines. And I say, oh, well, I really love swimming. Let me get a degree in something else that's, something of the arts or whatever that. And when you see people say they went to college and they spent all this money and they have no ROI, it really, if you're not in a STEM major, your ROI is going to be slim to none. But people that aren't educated probably don't know that and can't pass that on to their children. So, you got mom, dad, whoever, grandma, whoever, that is just barely making it, have little education, went to those same broken schools, and you decide you want to go to college for whatever. They're just like, oh, they just glad to see their baby walk across the stage, even though that degree worth as much as toilet paper in the marketplace. But they don't. They come out and then they realize, and then they took out all these student loans, and they're like, well, I got all these loans, I can't pay them back, and I'm still like struggling to find what they consider to be a decent job. So I think that plays into it too. Whereas, if you come from an area where, I don't know, dad's a dentist, mom's a accountant, CEO, physician, insert high paying job here, they're going to be able to guide you. Even if they hadn't go to college, but maybe they're a successful entrepreneur or something along those lines. They may be able to teach you some things. But whereas if your family just works, I'm not saying work in a grocery store, whatever it is, they have nothing to contribute. And I remember I had like a guidance counselor in college, and I don't know about if y'all had one, but they was on some bull. I went to them once. They were like, "Oh, you should do." I forgot what major she said, but it was something I was like, "Nah, like that's not me at all." And I had back, but had I listened to them, I'd have had a probably a pottery degree or something crazy like that. But if you don't, yeah, I'm like, what is this? And I may have gone that route. So that's part of it too, is having exposure and having someone kind of explain those options to you. But if you come from a place where people aren't educated, and it's drugs, it's violence, it's just nobody back home is explaining that to you.
Very true.
So that's a
Nigel says, I do know we hardly see any nursing majors at the party. If you come to the school I teach at, they at the party, the nursing majors at the party. And then 2 weeks later, when it's time to drop because or withdraw from the course or program or whatever, they the ones who also get kicked out, or they end up withdrawing from the program because they spend too much time partying. So our students be at the parties and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it's just really sad that it's a sad state of affairs that our students, because they're raised a certain way, are brought up to believe, and I'm not knocking partying. I'm not, because I did it, but I knew, I guess, I don't know, I just knew I had to find a balance. Well, I take it back. When it came to nursing school, I didn't do nothing but study. I didn't play about nursing school because I knew how serious it was. But when it came before that, I did all that already. I had all that kind of fun. I did all that, but I was studying. You said I didn't have time to party. I was studying until 3. Yep. In nursing school, I studied. So I went out one time in my 2 years in nursing school, but before that, I got that out of my system. I had been to the clubs already, then had babies already. I said, let me buckle down. I didn't have kids. I done sat there, going to the clubs before I was even old enough to go to the club. So when you had to be 18, I had already, I had already did that. So by the time I was 21, I'm like, I've been to the club so much, I'm burnt out of going to the club. So I had been to the club, been to the parties, been to the yard, been to the queues, all the parties that the Greeks have. I did all those things, had 2 kids along the way. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to have to settle down because I need to do this for my kids. Because now, while I'm out there doing all those things, and I tell my students, I unfortunately have to tell my students to get on birth control. You shouldn't have to have this conversation with your students. But at HBCU, my students, we have to have those real conversations because their parents ain't having it with them. Their parents not having it with them. So I'm up here acting like mama, saying, okay, you need to get on some birth control. I'm telling my male students that too. Listen, this is not the time to get pregnant or to get somebody pregnant. I said, because you have to, you know, a baby is hard even when you have the best of everything. The best. You have the best. I mean, like, you got money, you got a spouse, you got a support system, a new baby. Like, a new puppy is just as bad. Get you a new puppy. It's the same thing. They whining and crying all night. You got to feed them half all night long, and they crying once they mom. It's just a mess. You're not ready for that when you go to nursing school. You can pick one. Can it be done? Of course, it can be done, but it's not ideal type of thing. It's, hold on, I'm missing some people. So nursing is. Music City says nursing is unlike any other major on college campus. You have to be in that. Yep, you have to be in that mindset. He said, you may have to miss homecoming. I tell them that too. I tell them, matter of fact, when I see them as freshmen, I tell them, enjoy these first 2 years, but keep that GPA up. Enjoy the first 2 years. Go to the homecomings. Go to the parties. Keep the GPA up. Work if you can work. Because when you get to nursing school, you have to cut back some of that stuff. We have to tell them that. You said, been to the parties. Hey, VP Nursing, how are you doing? Been to the parties. Now it's time to create generational wealth. Absolutely.
Yep.
But that's having a mature mindset. It's not that we didn't do those things. We did all those things. And we even failed at a few things. We did things, we shouldn't have probably did that. Or I had to take a class twice. I shouldn't have did that. Took mine 3 times. Shouldn't have did that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I can't keep on spending this money. I got to take care of kids. I want something better. I want something different. I'm 44. Shouldn't be doing the same things I was doing when I was 18 years old. I should have grown from that to a certain degree. Or I'm at a point where I have stuff to lose. Like, okay, if I go mess something up, I'm messing up my livelihood, my kids' livelihood. So I have to kind of be on a straight and narrow. Don't mean you can't go have fun, but you have to know how to do it. But you're absolutely right. Generational wealth is what it is. He said, Secret Taurus says, did all my partying when I was in veterinarian school. They got the last laugh. You said that's the reason why your hubby won't show a puppy, because they're babies. Yes.
They are. Yes.
Puppies are babies. I mean, and the thing is, puppies are lifelong, or dogs, puppy dogs are lifelong babies. They don't, with children, they grow independent. Even by the time they're 1, a little after 1, they're walking, right? They're getting independence. When they start crawling and taking off, okay, that's it. They everywhere then, then when they start telling you no, they're not going to do it 2 years old, then they go to school, they grow independent. Dogs don't really ever do that. They do get trained to let you know when they go outside to go to the bathroom, or to get trained to do certain things, but you still got to pour the food to feed them. Mm-hmm. So they're puppies for other babies forever. You said, do you think some folks go into nursing to get money?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Plenty of wrong reasons. And I think this COVID situation, I don't want to dwell into COVID too much, but the COVID situation, I think the COVID situation really, what am I trying to say? Exploited that. So the COVID money, so like, okay, first of all, you had people who were dying left and right. You had people who were leaving nursing left and right. And then people's like, okay, well, we got to find some way to attract people to come do this job. And you paying me $7,000 a week when some people don't even make $7,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And now you hear that now they done backed up all that money. The travel nurses are kind of like, I'm gonna have to find something else, because I ain't about to do this for no $1,000 a week.
And I think the problem,
go ahead.
People don't understand price versus cost. The price might be 7, 8, 10K a week, whatever it is. The cost is your mental health, your physical health, yes, the anxiety you get every time. It's another 12 hours of misery you got to put yourself through. The years of life that you're taking off of yourself that you don't even realize. So when I talk to people who want to get into nursing, I tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I know when I did my research to get into nursing, I feel like I got bamboozled. I don't know if anybody else on here can relate, but I feel like I got hoodwinked, because I'm like, this is not what they told me it was. Like, the math ain't math, and somebody lied to me. I'm like, I'm not going to do that to anybody. If you want to get into it, you need to understand the good, the bad, the ugly, and understand that nurses aren't rich. If a nurse is rich, it's not from being a nurse. They have done something else. And understanding that you can make the same better money doing other things. And some people, I think, even with nurses, their mindset is only nursing. Like, there's so many other things you can do. And when I talk to other nurses, they're like, well, what else is that? I'm like, I mean, did you look around? Like, it's so much out here that isn't dealing with healthcare. Like, you're not a slave to nursing. So I just try to educate people to say, this is what it is. And if you're going to do it, at least you coming in eyes wide open. Because I thought my eyes were open. They were tape shut. They weren't even just regular duct tape over my eyes. I'm thinking I knew, and I was a paramedic before I was a nurse. I'm like, oh, I'm in healthcare. I get to meet nurses. No, it was all lies. And I look back like, why didn't they tell me? I would ask, how is it, like, tell me about your experiences. And it was always, oh my God, it's so great. And I'm rich, bitch. Like that was like what I got from it. And I'm like, oh, it's so great. And you're rich? Really? No.
They didn't tell
Lie.
about the fact that you had to miss holidays, weekends,
Lie.
the weekend, every other, you work night shift, that when you work your 3 12s in a row, that you felt like crap the whole week, especially if you work yours in a row, to get them over with, that you're going to sleep the next 2 days after that. Like, because you got to catch up on your sleep, your body's going to shut down regardless. Your body's going to say, okay, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to shut down. How many times you veered off the road trying to get home
Oh,
because you actually sleep? How many
yeah.
times how many times did you not even realize how you got home? That was
Mm-hmm.
me. There's times like, how did I even get home? Like, you wake up, like, how did I get in
So
my driveway?
the
Yeah,
car, go to
the
sleep at the
window
red.
down. I don't know how I made it home so many times. I don't know how I made it home, but I mean, those are the things that we pay. That's the reason why, like, I don't know how people can do, teach their own, but I definitely understand that. BP Nursing says, good, love the fact that you amazing women are educating. Thank you so much, BP Nursing. We appreciate you. You said, I mean, we're responsible for our lives, so we got to hit books hard and committed to being our best. But that's just the point. I think people, you see these nursing programs popping up like pop-up shops all over the internet and making it glimmer. Do you want to be a nurse? You can be a nurse in 12 months or less. You can be a nurse and da 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 da. I'm like, what quality nurse did you think you're gonna have in the whole 1 year?
You
What nurse? Now, I'm not talking about LPN programs, because some of the LPN programs are between 1 to 15 months or 18 months. But we're talking about traditional programs. A 4-year program, you can have a whole BSN in 18 months. Yeah, it's going to be accelerated, but I can guarantee you your quality of education you're going to get is crap. Trash, total trash. So yeah, they're not committed. You're right. Try to get some of these comments. Let me find. Okay, where are we at? You said everybody wants it until it's time to step up. Ain't that the truth? You said
I'm gonna be 51, but I feel 102 years. It will wear you out. I told somebody, I said nursing had me aging in dog years. Like, in
mm-hmm.
the stress. And once you start to understand the business side of it, it's like your eyes just open up and you're like, this is some bull. And by then, I know I speak for myself, I was knee deep. And that's one of the reasons, like my mentees, my students, I try to tell them these things. And if I can catch somebody before they even declare that as that major, not saying that you shouldn't if you want to go into the profession, I'm just saying know what you're getting, because they're not going to tell you this in nursing school. For one, nursing school is primary focus is to get you to pass the NCLEX. So a whole lot of stuff outside of that, they're not really interested in. Number one. Number two, they're run away. If they really, really told the truth of nursing, they wouldn't have any customers. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a so they're not invested in teaching and telling people about the other side. Because if I had $1 for every time someone said, Dr. Ray, why they didn't teach XYZ in nursing school? Well, number one, it's just not enough time. You never graduate, for one. And two, you're their customer.
Mm.
It's just like when you buy a candy bar, like those factories have roaches in them. They don't put that on the package. That is, 1% roach droppers. Nobody will buy Snickers. They ain't gonna tell you that.
But those
So
be good though. But
they still be good.
good. But
So
yeah.
that's how I see it. Like they're not gonna tell you that. But when I see colleagues and us kind of doing that to each other, kind of going into the whole eating your young, that's when I get disgusted by it, because I'm like, well, why not be transparent? Why not, say that? And then too, I think some people just want to feel better about themselves. So if they feel like, oh, I have something you want, and I breathe the air up here. And yes, I am wealthy. No, they ain't got two pennies to rub together, but putting on this persona because they might look rich, because that's another cultural thing. People love to have all their money out here and have 1 0 in the bank. Personally, I like multiple zeros. They've got 1 0 in the bank.
It's
But
probably negative debt,
yeah,
but okay.
yeah, they got all their money out, on the outside. And that's
Hmm.
fine to want. But I say that to say it brings a certain persona to those who are, especially young people, who are naive to, as I call, adulting, and don't really realize that. And like you said, some of the sacrifices that you make, the cat fighting, the bullying, if you BIPOC, that's a whole other category of issues. Down to working with the public. Some of the patients you do enjoy, but this I got a list of patients I don't never want to see again. You got them too, the crazy family members. So it's a lot to deal with, and nurses not the and people go into it ultimately to make a living. I don't know too many. There are some nurses that volunteer, but it ain't too many. Most people are nursing so they can pay their bills. And yes, maybe you have a passion for it, etc., etc. But most people are not doing it for free, and that I
Oh,
understand.
not for, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
most people not doing it for free. Most people got a light bill to pay.
yeah.
So
Bills,
it's
yeah.
that it's like, well, I get it that you want to go into it so that you can earn a living and take care of yourself, but just understand this is not the only option either. That's all I'm saying.
True, but if it's a passion of yours, that doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. Like, okay, if it's
That,
a passion, if you're doing it as this is a means to an end, then there are other options out there. When I came into nursing, it was not per se a passion of mine. It was because of the fact that I was looking for a stable job where I could take care of my two girls as a single parent. So I need to take care of my two girls by myself. And I did not want to depend on government assistance. I got tired of them being in my business regarding, how much money I had or what kind of car I drove and taking off to go down there and recertify. I was tired of that. So I wanted something that I could do, that I could have job security, that I'd be stable, that I could move anywhere in the United States and still get a job. And then the last thing was hopefully I'll like it. And as time went on, and that's why I went into OB nursing, because that's what I love to do. But for me, it is a passion. But even with that passion, I am not going back to that floor. That's how bad that is. I am not going back to the floor. Now, if they had some 6-hour shifts, my back still hurts because of that. My knees still hurt because of my 16 years on the floor. I'm done. I mean, I got clinicals tomorrow, but I teach the students in clinicals. I ain't doing the work. You see what I'm saying? I go sit down somewhere like, here, y'all go do this, take care of the patients. I make sure this done right. And that's kind of different, but I still have the same wear and tear on my body. I'm still wearing my compression socks. My back still hurts. I'm still walking up and down that floor for 12 hours. But I do have a passion for what I do. However, with that passion, I still have limitations and boundaries. That's the thing. You're not about to get me to sell my soul. Can you come in and work this extra shift? Absolutely not. See you when I come back in a month. That's kind of how I was. So I love what I do, but to continue to love what I do, I need the breaks. I gotta have breaks. I can't do this every day, 3 days a week. I was PRN, but I worked full time. PRN. I was PRN that worked full time. And then when I was teaching, I would back off to like 3 or 4 shifts per schedule. And then when I wasn't teaching, I go back to working full time hours. So I like that flexibility. So when y'all got on my nerves too bad, guess what? This is my last shift until whatever. So there, I think too, you have to find that fine line. There are other things to do, but you have to like, either no matter what you do, you should like what you're doing. You should have a passion for what you're doing, and that's how you can truly make a best impact by having a passion for what you're doing. Not seeing it as I don't care about what happens to you as a patient because this is just a job to me. Just like when people flip that burger over at McDonald's, they don't care who get the burger, they don't care who eat it, they don't care if you got diabetes, hypertension, or whatever. You want 12 Big Macs? Here you go, because it's a means to an end. It's just perspective, I think. Taz says you better stop thinking about money because this profession ain't for you.
this
For
ain't
sure,
it. I
for
tell people
sure.
that if you just looking for money, pick something else, because you can get
Mm-hmm.
this, but you get better money doing something completely different and arguably less stressful.
True, true. Adrian says they're fronting with their IG lives. You know what? Adrian said it. I ain't even going. I mean, they in Dubai, they in all these different places, taking first class trips. First class. That's in first class. Taking first class trips to everywhere, but you ain't showed how many shifts you had to work to make that. You ain't showed. I mean, not that you can, because in terms of HIPAA, but you can't show what goes on the floor, what you had to go through to make that money. Go ahead and be transparent and say I had to work 5.5 shifts to go ahead and put down the payment for the first class flight, to go ahead and put the payment down for my lodging. Then I have to eat. Then I have and then you have to have the time off too. So can you afford the time off? Can you afford not being gone for about a week and a half? Sometimes you can line up your schedule just right to where you can. Sometimes you can't. So it just depends. You said, Tess says I can work 2 fast food jobs and make what I make now. Oh, now see that is sad.
It
I
has
mean,
zero
that's
frequency.
sad. Say that when you say that. Secret Taurus says, yes, there's so much more to nursing out there where nurses don't even see patients. Sure don't.
Rich. Yeah, this ain't it if you try and be rich. This ain't
Nurses
it.
will drive home in a daze and not even remember how I got there. A lot of nurses have made their job their personality. Somebody else talked about that. I'm going to do a video on that one too. Like I feel like, okay, a nurse is what your occupation is, your career. Like, it's not everything of who you are. Like, that is a part of me. That is what's helped me get myself out of situations that I have personally been in terms of helping me get from being on public assistance. So for me, it was great. But I had to learn about the personality thing. And I think, unfortunately, what shaped me into realizing that is when I got wrote up so many times and realizing that, okay, I had to sell myself to be somebody that I really wasn't. And when I
Yeah.
took who I was, that's when the game changed for me. Because at that point in time, I have options now. So I don't have to sit there and code switch and change. I can change the whole narrative. Like, this is who I am. Either you accept me or you don't. My credentials speak for themselves. You see what I'm saying? And that's why I appreciate some people on here on this app who stay true to themselves. Because I wasn't true to myself when I first started off in nursing after I got wrote up so 15,000 dozen times. I mean, a lot. I got wrote up a lot. And I'm like, what am I doing? And that kind of makes you depressed too, to know that, okay, you in trouble for whatever.
And that's another thing. So going back to being an ally for a BIPOC person is to help to change the culture of that environment so people can feel more comfortable to be themselves. And there are even some cultural things that I feel like other people may not understand. Like I know you mentioned earlier that a lot of times um, BIPOC females have deeper voices. And another thing that's kind of cultural with us is that sometimes we get excited about something,
Get
we
loud.
get it's not that you're yelling in like a it might sound like it's coming off that way because your voice is deep, or I mean you might be pissed off, but it's that's not what it always is. But the lens that someone else sees that through versus the lens we see it through is different. Because I know, and I have one person in my family now, she yell all the time, but if on the outside somebody saw her, they probably start recording, like this lady
Mm-hmm.
crazy. That's just how she is. I'm paying no mind. But that's like a cultural thing. But a lot of us don't even feel comfortable in that role. And that's why a lot of times you may see BIPOC people, nurses, in space that are predominantly white. A lot of times we're just quiet because we feel like, we really don't have nothing to say. And a lot of us feel like we're always walking on eggshells anyway, because, we're being judged or looked at differently, or, something along those lines. And then sometimes you don't even want to run the risk of just stirring up any unnecessary drama because you probably already don't want to be there. You're probably already tired. If you've been there for a while, you're probably burnt out. So you add that, like, I ain't got nothing to say. Come on.
Clock is ticking. Yep.
So you really don't even want to do that. But in becoming an ally, making safe spaces for people to be able to express themselves without a write up or without being called into an office because you don't like somebody's face, and just this nitpicky stuff. That is part of being an ally, and also checking people that do those sorts of things. The Karens of the world, just the completely unnecessary drama queens of the world, and there's plenty of them in nursing.
Mm-hmm. Secret Taurus says, I'm getting my MSN in informatics. That's wonderful.
Right?
I'm glad you like informatics because that's something I did not care for. But I'm good. We need people in all areas of nursing. Good. Maybe you can change a lot of how we chart and document in terms of, going forward, because some of these documentation systems are just crazy. It's more mathematics than documentation and charting systems. But that's one that need to be worked on. Like we need to get rid of, is it Meditech? I think it's Meditech. I think HCA uses Meditech. Get rid of that. Start with that, you know. Adrian says we need to hold the state's boards of registered nurses. I think that's what it means. Accountable for licensing degree. Yes. And again, that's where I said the pop-up shops, when I keep on talking about, well, you know, all these pop-up shops, all these schools advertising about this, that, and the other. I'm like, okay, where did school come from? Schools just be popping up left and right. You can get your degree. We see some ads here on TikTok if you look long enough. You know, you can get your degree. Have you ever wanted to be a nurse? You know how they be marketed and stuff. You can get your BSN in 8 months. And people are like, yeah, I want to do that. Okay, well, if you research the BSN as a 4-year degree, it used to be a 5-year degree. And in some schools now it's a 3-year degree. Like we're doing everything we can to trim these programs down to make it minimally nothing and put them out to take care of patients. I'm afraid to be a patient with the new nurses coming out. It's terrible. Hey,
Yeah.
Jesse, you in a minute, Jesse. What's the topic? So the original topic is we've talked about a little bit of everything, but the original topic is becoming allies to the BIPOC community. Is that what the topic is?
Yes.
Okay, becoming allies to the BIPOC community, nurse edition. So basically, we're talking about how minority nurses kind of have to dumb themselves down or cower down or whatever, you know, to it's kind of like imposter syndrome, basically, where you feel like you don't belong, and you kind of bring yourself down so that you are not intimidating or causing problems with the non-BIPOC people. And so a specific nurse last week had said, "Hey, what can we do to remedy that?" So we're kind of talking about those topics, and then we've kind of, you know, went off topic a few times as well. First, April says 15-month LPN program. California was 20 months. That's a long program. That's a good program. Meme says, I'm about to start my DMP next month. Oh, congratulations. You said you're nervous and excited. You should be both of them. Be both of them. That DMP ain't no joke, Memes. It ain't no joke, but congratulations on starting. If you happen to need any advice or anything like that, Dr. Ray and myself both have DMPs. And so we'd be happy to, you know, kind of give you some advice or whatever. If you happen to need anything, just let us know.
It's true. All bent over and creaking with bottle in hand. Yeah. It'll tear you up after a while. It's a lot of hard work.
Music City says I look flawless. The freaks look dusty and broke down. Nursing school is the cash cow for many schools, especially the science classes. It sure is. For many university systems or whatever, nursing is the one that brings in the money.
The rakes it in.
He said nurses have a high rate of work injury of all occupations. I believe it. Our back is one of them. What else? Back and knees, I think, are two of our biggest issues. There's the back and knees, and I have both back, my sciatica pain, and my knees are a big issue as well.
Wait a minute now. 1% roach. It's true. It's a certain percentage that they can have in chocolate and candy. I saw like a documentary on it, and I was like, bleh. But I mean, I still had chocolate covered strawberries earlier, but I mean, they ain't gonna write that on the package.
Hey, you know, as long as I know nothing about it, but you have these places that people have documented things like that. Taz says, I don't work a minute past my 12 hours. You better get up in here. You know what? Let me tell you something. If I do work past my 12 hours, you know we had a rough shift because they already know, get them up in here so I can give you a report. Keep on. I'm going to have the report written down somewhere and I'm going to be out the door because I'm not playing that. You know, get in here. So if you ever see me, when they ever saw me pass, they said, oh, she ain't finished charting yet. Oh, it was a bad shift. It's a bad shift because I start my 6 o'clock vitals at 4. We could do that. Mm-hmm. If you called, well, I take it back. If you called out after 4, I wouldn't start until about 5, really, for 6 o'clock. But if you called out after 4 o'clock, I'm getting your vitals then, getting everything wrapped up for you then, documenting everything right then. So like, okay, you needed more medication, got your water filled, cleaned up your room a little bit, whatever pillows, whatever you needed for your nighttime guest. I get everything done, vital signs done. I won't bother you for the rest of the shift. You will see me again when I bring in your nurse for tonight. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So when I bring your nurse in for the night, and I'd have medicated you, it ain't time for no more medication. I make sure my patients is done. You know, I do about a 30-minute check to see if medication okay. If it's not, if I can have something, I'll give them something else. But I'm like, no, when it's time to go, I'm with Taz. You're not gonna catch me up in there. You ain't gonna catch me up in there. See, Secret Nurse says it's definitely a passion of mine. What's THT? Oh, that I will not do for free unless I'm volunteering in an impoverished country. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with that. It's a passion of mine too, but we got to have boundaries, is what we saying. Like, okay, don't people get so caught up in this profession where they're kind of like, um, there's their passion, their calling, or whatever they call it, but yet they every time they ask you to work an extra shift, you doing it, but you stressed. If you're doing it and you cool, you ain't got no family, you ain't got nothing else to do, cool, fine. But these be people who do this thing, working all these extra shifts just to get another $20 on their check, not literally, but to get another $20 on their check. By the time you take out 401k and taxes, because they didn't tax you to death, and then you appear stressed and you complaining. If you at work complaining every shift, you don't need to be doing all these extra shifts because that's going on to your mental health. So you can have a passion for something, but still have boundaries, and that's what I had to learn. Constance says I have a confession and I need help. What's your confession? Or maybe it's down here somewhere. But what's your confession? You can be an electrician or a stockbroker.
I thought I probably should have been a plumber. I think
Oh,
so. We had a
HVAC, HVAC
plumber
and plumbing.
30 minutes. Oh, what the hell am I doing? It's like it took him probably not even 30 minutes. 10 of the minutes we were talking. I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm. Taz says travel nurses. Thank you, Adrian. Taz says travel nursing where money is, but these new nurse grads too slow to need to slow down about traveling. I agree. Like I would, you know what? I don't even want. I'm not even gonna go there because it just makes me agitated when I hear new grads who really think they come out of school knowing something when they got the watered down version of the watered down COVID version of nursing, because these are the COVID nurses are coming out. More recently, they're getting back into a routine, but the past year and a half, that was COVID nurses, what I call COVID nurses, because they were COVID students coming out. You don't know nothing because you didn't halfway go to clinical. That BCM didn't teach you a thing, and you had your classes online. Having classes online, their classes are meant to be in person online, it does not lend itself to the same teaching and education as you do when you do in person. It's something about being with your cohort that makes it different when it comes to learning in education. So, yep, they sure did.
So, Doc, let me ask this. As a nurse educator, take the business side out of it. Yes, we know education is a business first, but just for a second, put that to the side. Understanding how jacked up, now I'm not saying 100%, but how jacked up a lot of these COVID nurses' education was, do you think, strictly from an educational standpoint, that nursing schools should have kind of shut down the programs until we got to a point where they could go to clinical and get actual human interaction, etc., to be able to be stronger when they finally did graduate? Do you think they should have like paused it?
I think for the students who are, I don't think they should have accepted anymore. The ones who are currently in programs already, they have to matriculate. So, like, that's one thing, but they kept on accepting students.
Did
And
they?
so, I mean, and take the business side out, and we know why they accepted students, but take that out. I think they should have been like, okay, we're going to put this on hold. Because we have students currently who did not go to clinical at all. Matter of fact, the ones that just graduated, they didn't go to clinical for the first time until last semester. The first time they just graduated, right? So out of 4 semesters of school, they went to clinical maybe you got to have like 100 and something hours per semester, at least at our school, 100 and something hours per semester of clinical time, depending on the class. They may have gotten a total of 100 hours, if that's in the true clinical setting, their entire 4 years. I mean, entire 2 years of nursing school. So I do think they should have finished who they had because they were already there. But I don't think they should have. I don't think I would have admitted anymore. But of course, that would impact the business side of it because then who are you? When you get these people done, who are you paying the educators for?
Yeah, agree. Totally agree. I mean, I know it's business side of why they were doing it.
Yeah, I do. I do. And honestly, if it was possible, I think the ones who were in school should have got to stay in a little longer. But the problem with that is we didn't know when COVID was going to end. Now we can look in hindsight and be like, okay, well, it ended, da 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 da. But at that point in time, we had no idea when COVID was going to end. So I don't know how we would have gauged when to start back. You know, I don't think at the beginning we knew we were going to be living with COVID. Like it's back up again now. But at this point in time, if you hadn't had it already, you probably gonna get it. Probably had it, didn't know it, or you got your vaccinations. You see what I'm saying? Or they died. Any of those combinations could have happened. So I feel like at that point in time, they didn't know what this was going to be like. I honestly thought we were going to shut down for 2, 3 months. Okay, by August, we good to go. Let's move on to the next thing in our life. Back in what 2020, it didn't happen that way. And and here we are with the spikes up again. So I think that yes, they should have not admitted anymore, but finished the ones they had, but extended their programs. But financial, but and that's in the ideal world, because then financial aid has to pay for that, and
Thank
financial aid is not going to pay for that. You see what I'm saying? Like, it all comes back. No matter how we look at it, it's going to come back down to the money side of it. So no money involved. Yes, close. No new students, because again, these are the same ones who didn't get to take the T's or whatever interest exam had to be taken, because of the fact that why those facilities were shut down. So if we can't even see if they're competent to get into the program, why are we letting them in to begin with? Hence why we had 30 something students who get admitted with no entrance exam, who 20 something of them were deemed when I say incompetent, I don't mean it in that sense, but not ready for nursing. That test would have ruled them out to begin with. So that's just my thought. What do you think? You think we should have shut the whole thing down, and then, or what do we do with what we would have did with the current students though?
the current students. This is just Ray's way. I'm thinking put everything on pause. But again, to your point, yes, we didn't know when it was going to end. But I say that again, like you said, in hindsight, seeing the quality that has come out, and also listening to some of my friends who do bedside nursing, and like my one friend, I call her a super nurse. I'm like, if I'm ever sick, I don't want nobody else taking care of me but her. She is excellent. But she's saying that she's getting frustrated with some of the orientees because it's basic stuff that they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a great like a preceptor type mentor. She's been doing it forever, very good at what she does. But she says she's getting frustrated because basic assessment skills, they don't have. And she says she can see the difference, throughout the years of precepting new grads. And she's like, no, they're not. She said she feels like she has to be more of a teacher role than a, preceptor, kind of showing kind of thing. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure that she's not the only one that's saying this. And ultimately, we have a duty to the public,
Yeah.
but it's a business first. I get all that. But thank you. But I also realize that in having that duty to the public, schools are cranking out these nurses who are incompetent and just flat out aren't ready. And with no regard to the quality of care they're going to provide to people, because the way the schools see it, they got their money, and if they manage to get them to pass the NCLEX, then they can check that box too. So if you go out here and decide, you gonna make an error and end up in this spiral, that's not their problem.
Right. And that's the mentality they have. That's going to be their problem when they get out there. And this comes back all down to money, because they won't let you not graduate so many people, because then you could lose your accreditation. So like, for instance, when you come to your ASAN, your stand, not ASAN, your well, yeah, ASAN is one of the accrediting body. Well, your standards, you set a standard to say, okay, we are going to graduate a certain percent of our every class that comes through here. So let's just say, for instance, we're gonna put as our standard that I'm going to graduate 70% of every class or cohort that comes in. So if you do it every semester, a new class, a new cohort every semester, then 70% of that cohort, we expect to lose students. So it's not that we're trying to retain everybody. You expect to lose some. But let's just say the number you're going to pick is 70%. If you do that, but then you consistently drop below that because you have had to fail people, you're going to lose your accreditation. So like, it's a double-edged catch-22 type of sword thing, where no, if you vet them at the beginning and get good students to begin with, you're still going to lose some. You're still going to lose some, but you won't lose, 3/4 of your class if you had vetted them to begin with. We don't want everybody. I keep telling people, we don't want everybody in nursing. We don't. Y'all need to stop making this like a trophy event where everybody gets one. No, we do not want. Some people do not qualify to be a nurse. Some of us don't qualify to be a doctor. Guess what? I could not be an engineer or a lawyer. You know, but well, I have no desire to be, but I'm sure if I put my mind to it, I could. But I'm just simply saying, like, everybody's not meant to do this job. So I think that's just kind of how I see it. But from the business standpoint, it is what it is. But I do think they should have shut down, not admitting any new students. We're going to put our program on hold for whatever, but you will be the next class when we start admitting again, whatever. I think that the students if it was possible for them to get an extension in terms of, okay, you did not get this many clinical hours, maybe we can just focus on you on going to clinicals and doing those things, because simulation in itself is great, but it's great when it's paired with live clinicals. You see what I'm saying? Virtual VSIM is great, but when it's paired with simulation and live clinicals. To sit up on a computer for 8 hours a day, you doing busy work, is not the same. And that's what our students did. And that's what they did mostly everywhere, because I've taught at different institutions everywhere. So Nurse Agent said, it's our professional responsibility to educate ourselves and be aware about our bias. True. I'm learning a lot of truths about nursing that I didn't know before. I passed my boards in February. Congratulations. So what are the, okay, so I haven't started working yet because I'm scared after all the things I hear. If you don't go out there and get your job, because it
Yeah.
ain't gonna change, Katina. Nothing gonna change in nursing. You just have to be, you have to have the mindset, don't let nothing scare you out of what you went to school for. Unless you decide that this is not what you want to do. If this is not what you want to do, chop it up as a loss and keep it moving. But outside of that, if you still feel like you want to be a nurse, no matter what, you're gonna have a day one sometime. We all have a day one. And them day ones, them year ones, do not go that well. It's kind of like paying your dues. And I'm not speaking of the nurses eating their young component. That's not what I'm saying. That's part of it too. It's truly learning how to be a nurse. It just takes time. So
Learning.
what are you really scared of? Thank you, Nurse Mimi. How are you?
And Music City says we are perceived as being standoffish if we don't gossip in the nurses station. Like them. I agree. I agree. It's like now you're the outcast of the
Right.
mean. Nurse Adrian 100. It's our professional responsibility to educate ourselves and be aware about biases. I totally agree. A lot of people aren't self-aware or emotionally intelligent. Some people are just reactive and feel like whatever situation they grew up in is norm. And what do you mean you don't agree with me? Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
highly educated and I'm right. Like, that's some people's attitude. And part of it too is because people, nobody's checking them. That's part of it.
Adrian says, Marita calling incoming nurse while they drive us to give report. I've done that before. No lies. No lies. There'll be times like, you know what? Tell them to call me on their way when they get to the hospital, because I'm already gone. I've left a written report. Adrian, I leave a written. I don't just walk out, but I do leave a written report. And then I'll say they can read the report. They can call me if they have any questions. And that's exactly what I do. You ain't gonna have me sitting up here waiting all night, because I work day shift. Have me working all night, waiting on you because you had to go to the coffee. You had to go to Starbucks first. Then you had to go park your car. You was late. Number one. Number two, you had to go put your stuff in the locker, and then I had to go use the bathroom. No, we ain't got time to do all that. So go ahead. My written report's on the table. You can call me if you have any questions. It's exactly how I do. And that they probably think I'm mean because of that. I can't help it if y'all gonna sit there and stay and wait on these people. I'm not. I have boundaries. Like, I'm not going to do it because we got rolled up. If you stay past 7:08, and it
Oh,
wasn't because of the fact of like some type of crisis going on. If you stay past 7:08, you got rolled up. I ain't
oh,
getting reports on the table. Let me know if you have any questions.
you can't sim psych rotation. You ain't kidding. I don't sim OB either. I mean, well, no, I guess you could, but it's just not the same, and it's just so many variables that go on. But this is the system that we're in. Look like real life interactions and hands on training. True. Preach, Dr. P. I don't want. No, is it? I do want to be a nurse. The pandemic started my very first semester. I feel like I know nothing. And I'm sorry to hear that, but a lot of people feel like that coming out. But if you, unfortunately, were at the disadvantage of not having adequate clinical in addition to the didactic, if your learning curve may be a little steeper, you'll get it eventually if you're committed. But it might take you a little longer. But you'll get there.
So you're gonna have to be an advocate for yourself. If this is what you really want to do, you got to be an advocate for yourself. And this is gonna be the problem though. And you graduated and you passed in February, you said, and you haven't started working yet. The further you remove yourself from school and start, the harder it's going to be, because you're gonna forget a lot of the things. You're gonna be the one who, like, okay, I think I got my head to toe assessment down. Then you get in there to try to do the head to toe assessment, like, dang, what you supposed to do? You know, I'm listening to what's the rating? What's I listen to the heart sounds and lung sounds? Tricuspid. How do I do that again? Because the further away you remove yourself from it, the harder it will be. You're gonna have a day one. If you're truly interested in becoming a nurse, then you go find a job. You tell them the situation. I wouldn't say I'm scared about anything, because that, depending on where you go, that may red flag you anyway. But I'll say, you know what? I took some extra time to mentally get ready, and here I am. I'm ready to start. You write everything down. You go with the notebook, write everything down. You ask questions. You ask for, make sure you can get a good orientation. If you're not ready by the end of that orientation, you ask for more time, and then you get out there and start working. Don't worry about the skills so much. The IV start skills, the Foley skills. You can go to same day surgery. If you say, hey, you know what, I was not that great. I went to nursing school during COVID, and we did not get a lot of hands on. I don't know how to start IVs. I'm not good at putting Foleys in. Tell the nurse manager that. He or she could send you to same day surgery, and you start IVs all day long for a few shifts, put in Foleys for, a few shifts, go to the ER, do the same thing. And by that, you'll be proficient. I won't say you've mastered it, but you'll be proficient at it. So, like, there's ways to do this. If you're truly serious about being a nurse, just go ahead and get your day one, because if you don't, if you decide, okay, I'm going to wait till January of next year, you're going to be almost a year removed from school. And at that point in time, you would have lost so much. This is truly a situation where if you don't use it, you will lose it. And it's beyond the test at this point, because you're already at a deficit to begin with. Not your fault. You're already at a deficit to begin with. And now you're allowing time to be another deficit of yours, where you're trying to get into the nursing profession. And then you're coming in back. If you decide to do it now, guess what? COVID numbers back up again. So they're going to be trying to push people back on their own quicker. Quicker. So, okay, you know what? The numbers are back up. We don't have no staff. You on your own. We don't have nobody to train you. It's going to be hard. But if you really want to be a nurse, you can do it. I guess that's all I have to, that's all I can think of on that one. You can do it. You said, I don't get it when nurses aren't treating themselves as professionals with standards. I don't either.
It's like a culture. It's a lot of things about nursing I don't understand. That's why I always say I'm the unicorn nurse, because I'm like, it's a lot. And Adrian, to be honest, I gave up trying to understand some of this shit. I just, I just accepted that this is how it is. I don't even try anymore, because I used to kind of get upset about it, but now I don't even get upset anymore. As long as it's nothing directly coming towards me, thank you. I'm like, what? Just whatever, just whatever. Because you can't. One person can't fight the system, And at one point, I felt like I tried, and I just got frustrated and burnt out.
You just be the
But
best you can be and keep it moving.
yeah, I do the best that I can do. I always make sure I do the best I can for my patients, and I go home. And I'm one of those people where nursing definitely isn't my life. I don't. It's not how I define myself. It's a career for me. Is it a passion? Not really, but I do it. Passion, no. But it has afforded me certain things. It has taught me a lot about myself.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my story. But I just kind of, I do what I need to do, and I go to work, and I leave work there. Like, I don't. And unless something really crazy happens, then you have like the conversation at the dinner table, like, guess what happened today? But I think that's any field or anything that people do. But yeah, I feel you on that one. And a lot of nurses, I think, because it's female dominated, don't stand up for themselves the way that they should. I think it's kind of a culture of being passive. And when a large majority of them are like that, if you're the one that's more assertive, you're seeing it. And if you're BIPOC, you're the angry black woman or black man. But even if you're not BIPOC, you're kind of looked at as, maybe hostile or some sort of problem.
Elon says, what I hated about my program was that it was lecture point based. I feel like nursing school should be clinically based and 25% lecture based. What do you think?
I think it depends. I mean, lecturing, yes, it's a passive way of learning. But I I think
You're not going to go ahead. I'll let you finish. Sorry.
I
I'm on
think
my.
that I think that does leave a level of subjectivity. Personally, me, I don't mind lectures. I know there's studies out that says, interactive learning is better. But I guess it just depends. But what I can say, and this I do know, regardless of what you do, it's always going to be somebody that complain about it. It don't matter what you do. It's always going to be somebody that's not satisfied with it. But also, I would suggest if you want to incorporate more of that, that's some things you can do to look as part of your, of your study time. But also realize that nursing school too, their main goal is to have you pass the NCLEX. That's like their main goal. So a lot of that sort of training is going to be what they do in didactic, but how they deliver that, is going to vary by program.
And I think, Eli, you mentioned that because of the way your program is set up. The way your program is set up could be pretty common, but that's not what we call if you're complaining about that, because if you don't have a true understanding of A&P, micro, and all these things, you can't do clinical. So no, it should not be majority clinical and less didactic. Now, if you're talking about lecture based in terms of just the classroom component or lecture based in terms of style, that part I'm not actually sure about. But I'm gathering that you're saying clinical versus theory or didactic. And it shouldn't be that way because you cannot apply something that you never learned. You can't, you're talking about task. Clinical is just task. That's starting an IV. That's starting with putting in a Foley. That's those type of things. The theory behind it tells you why we do what we do, why we intervene the way we do. That is what true nursing is about, not about the clinical side. We do it in the clinical side. So if you don't have a strong foundation in the lecture components, again, how Dr. Ray was saying about, how it's delivered is one thing. I do active learning in my classrooms. I don't do passive learning. So you can't come to my classroom thinking I'm going to lecture for 3 hours on this topic. You don't learn that way. Studies show you don't learn that way. So if that's what you're talking about, lecture format, like I'm sitting there reading PowerPoints in front of you, yeah, that's not effective. That's ineffective, or not as effective, shall I say, as other new studies about how other methods of delivering quality education. But if we're talking about truly classroom learning, the theory behind it, the theory behind why we do things, and then applying those things in the clinical setting, you cannot do clinicals unless you know the why. So we don't want someone out here just running around doing tasks. That's not what nurses do. I could train a dog to do tricks. Okay, I could train. If you train a CNA, they could put in a catheter. They could start an IV. It's not in their scope, but they could do it. It's the training is the why we do what we do. What is the rationale behind the actions that you took to do X, Y, and Z? Why did you give that blood pressure medication? Well, because it's ordered. No, because not because it's just ordered, because of the fact that the patient's blood pressure is 170 over 90. And because of my assessment skills, you learned that, guess where? In school. And I apply it in the clinical setting. My assessment skills tells me that 170 over 90 is not conducive to his heart or her heart or their kidneys, right? That's what hypertension basically is, right? It's something going on internally with the angiotensin 1 and angiotensin 2. Don't make me break that all the way down to y'all. Okay. So anyway, when it's like that, then that's kind of, you have to know that. Because if the doctor says give the blood pressure medication, and I'm making a number up, let's just say the blood pressure was 150 over 90. That's high. That's high. But I'm gonna make up a crazy number, right? Let's just say they said give 5,000 milligrams of labetalol. And you say, okay, then, because that's what the doctor ordered. He or she must know. And you didn't do your assessment skills. You're like, okay, wait a minute. The blood pressure is high. However, my patient is also in pain. Okay. And their pain is a 10 out of 10. If you go back and look at their trends, you will see their blood pressure has actually been in the 120s over 60s for the past 2 days. There's something that has happened in this situation that made it be that high, but they don't need 5,000 milligrams of labetalol. That's what your theory teaches you. Clinical doesn't teach you that. That's why I don't agree with that sentiment, but I'm basing that off of what I think you're trying to say, but I'm not sure if you're saying that or not. So, let's see what else. We're gonna have to wrap this up. Hey, Peter's here.
Hey, Peter.
We don't know how to say your last name. Hold on.
Whole niche for refresher courses. There are. I actually saw a position for that. I thought would be a nice little side hustle they had for refresher courses, and some community colleges I've seen offer refresher courses for people that are already nurses, but maybe have been out of the clinical setting for some time. Maybe they were, I call them paper nurses. Like maybe you were doing something non-clinical, working for an insurance company, or I don't know, maybe you decide to stop for a while and be a chef, whatever it is, and you can go back and get, a crash course. You always say something about the problems you have. Never stay quiet. Yeah.
It's true.
And
Advocate for confident humility can coexist. You said, I remember my first time doing an NGT check off and I didn't ask questions and I failed. Yes. So ask questions, be proactive and be eager to learn, but don't be a, what's that? Okay, Adrian. Tina says you got it. Okay, good. So we expect to hear back that you have applied for a job and that you are on an interview, and then we expect to hear back that you have then got a new job and hear how it's going. And we will be, if you need help in terms of that process as well, if you feel like, okay, hey, I don't know what to do, they're acting like this towards me, reach out to us, DM us, and we can help you through that process. You said, Eli, during COVID, it was hard, but I never gave up. If you want to do it, you can do it. Yep, absolutely true.
amen. Amen. There's me. Sometimes, I don't know. That's why sometimes I say I can't make videos with all my thoughts on here.
Eli says, okay, so now I see what you're, so I think it's just your program. The lecturing for us was so pointless except for farm. And you know what, Eli? It could be the delivery of who taught you too. The way I say nursing schools, there's levels to this. There's also levels to students and there's levels to educators too. So you could have somebody who just graduated yesterday and they're going to start teaching today, and they're not going to be as effective as someone who's been doing it for a few years. Or you could have somebody who's been teaching for 30 years, but because their program does not require them to adhere to best practice or evidence-based research, or their program doesn't require them to go back for continuing education units to go to workshops, they're still teaching how they were taught 30 years ago. That is a problem too. So if that's what you're talking about, I agree with you 1,000%. But I don't think we should change the narrative of how the program is designed. I scored my preceptor in nursing school and was old school. You said you had it on lock. Good.
You don't hear me?
Hey, we can hear you.
So I just kind of wanted to break that down about what I was trying to say. I wasn't meaning cut out lecture as a whole, or even the just the 25%. But you're right on with what you said about it was specifically with my program, because after I graduated, I realized how I don't want to say that they weren't knowledgeable nurses, because I feel like it's kind of mean, but a lot of them just didn't apply what they had learned in their own nursing programs, because a lot of our teachers were new, except for the course coordinator. He was actually and he had been a nurse for 20 years and had his doctorate in nursing, so he was very knowledgeable. But a lot of the instructors were not, and when they taught us, it was repetitive, and it was like they would make it up out of their own booties. I'm trying to not cuss. And when I got ready to go in and do my NCLEX, a lot of the stuff that they taught us was not even applicable to the test, except for what we had been taught from our course coordinator. So it was so frustrating. And I talked to you guys about my program before, and my program, it honestly, it sucked. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I'm with you 100% on that. That makes sense. Okay, I apologize. I was thinking more along the lines of you're saying let's do more clinical and take out a component of the didactic.
Oh no, you have to have didactic to actually succeed, because you have to learn before you go in.
Right, you're right. So and see, the thing is, you're not alone in your program, because there are so many programs across the USA that have the same sentiment, where they're ineffective educators, and it's like, okay, their job again is to pump y'all out, and sometimes it's like business side. We keep talking about the business side of everything. It's business first, and sometimes okay, I've talked to Dr. Ray this earlier today, is saying, hey, our institution is hiring all these adjuncts to teach didactic classes. I'm like, your adjuncts should really be in the clinical setting, really, because a lot of times they do clinical. But you're going to bring somebody in who ain't never taught a day in their life to teach students, and you're not going to
exactly.
You think our students are going to have good outcomes just when the instructors don't know how to teach themselves? So
don't make me a guinea pig.
I misunderstood, so I apologize for that. But
no, you're fine. You're fine. Right. That's the way I wrote it. Looked messed up. I looked at it and I was like, "Oh no, that looked bad." but but like just going through the program, I just wish that our program could have been more clinically based on the fact of when we were in clinicals or sim lab or whatever you want to call it, they actually taught us more. Like they would have PowerPoints like in the background playing like while they were doing it. So like I learned how to do more in clinical than I did in lecture. With it was so backwards. Like I just feel like, there was so many new people coming in that had just got their CNEs, and it was new to them just like it was new to us, and it was a lot of miscommunication back and forth, and that's the reason why we suffered that semester. 3 or 4 of those instructors actually left. One got fired, because it was just a mess. And then they ended up bringing people back. They were like asking other nurses that had taught previously to come back, and now the program's back at full speed. Like it's one of the top running in Arkansas.
So you can see how novice educators negatively can, not always, but can negatively impact a program. And if you have
Oh
one or
yeah.
but if you have them across the program, that's going to be detrimental to your students, and they're not going to know. I had that same complaint. Well, it wasn't a complaint on me. I was doing simulation, and the students were getting their OB. I was doing OB STEM or clinical, so whatever you want to call it, OB STEM. And the instructor was teaching the didactic part of the class. The students were coming to me saying, okay, you teach this in simulation to the point where we understand it. We don't understand nothing she's talking about in class. So I'm up here having to go, okay, well, what you all talking about? There's some of the GTPAL, in terms of, gravity pair and all the other stuff, term and all that stuff. I'm up breaking it down how it's supposed to go. And I created in a scenario. They would get it then. Like, oh, we understand what to do. And they getting it right on the test. But if she taught the material first and they tested on it, they would fail it. Then they could be in STEM and we put the whole thing together, they would get it. I think it has a lot to do with who's versus, I think it's who's teaching. That's the problem.
Yeah. And a lot of my issue, like with the points issue, what I was saying with like the lecture points, is for lecture
Mm-hmm.
for us. I don't know if it would like for you guys' programs, but the exams seem to matter more than anything else. And I get that they're important, but they were around 75% of our grade. Like, and I just don't think that was fair because sometimes they didn't word the questions correctly, and I know that everyone's going to make their tests differently
Mm-hmm.
because it was faculty constructed. But there were some teachers that would word it in a master's degree level or a doctorate degree level, and none of us could understand. So I'd have to give 10 points back because like the whole class would miss 10 to 20 questions.
Yeah, that's not good. No, that's not good at all. And that comes from not knowing how to write item questions. Well, that's the whole skill to do that by itself. Like if they don't get it from the test bank and we write our own questions, there's a skill to writing questions. We actually take classes on how to write test questions. And so if they're not doing that to their faculty where they're sending them to classes or doing workshops saying, okay, we're going to have a workshop on item writing, then that's what's going to happen. Like there's people don't understand. There's so much goes on in education behind the scenes that we go through to make sure that you get the best education possible. And if we don't go through that, you're going to get subpar education. So your education is contingent upon my education and my training.
Right. It's
That's
depending on who teaches you.
so if your educator is educated, is up to date, goes to conferences, seminars, listen to TED Talks, even Facebook groups that we have that says, okay, hey, how are y'all doing this? What's something fun we do in the classroom? And we all really big kids at heart. We all like to do things in a fun, learning way. That's how we remember. That's how we teach kids songs because that's how they learn.
Yep.
We learn the same way even as adults. So if I can find a creative way for you all to do something for it to stick, you can be like, okay, I got it. I remember that song we learned in class, and then you get the question right on the test. You understand why. So we have to figure out ways to do that, and people don't know how to do that because no one has taught them how to do that. We need to be educators need mentors too. We just don't really have enough people go around to do that.
And that's what I was gonna apply that to my degree once I advance because I'm going for my master's right now. Getting my bachelor's was hard enough, like as it is, because it was so much thesis work. But I want to get my certified nurse education license because I want to be an instructor for those who suffered like I did in nursing school. Because I know I would be good at it. I love teaching people. And those things that you mentioned, I love being involved in, because I want people that I teach to come out being better nurses than me.
There you go. That's what I want too. I want when you lay up on that bed because you sick, or your loved one is sick, or your child is sick, or whoever's sick in your family, and you happen to be in the same area where you taught a student, and they walk in, you be like, go ahead and close your eyes. You can rest because they're gonna take care of you. Versus like, nope, I don't want that one. Nope, not that one.
Honey, yes,
You
because
want that
you
one who's gonna take care of you.
you need somebody that you can, not only that you can trust, but that's going to do it better than you did 10 times, like tenfold. Because you think of everybody, this is how we were taught. We were all taught in nursing school, no matter if you're an LPN, LVN, RN, whatever. You think of every patient like they're your family.
Yep, you
And
got to.
that's the way I've thought about it through nursing school. And going into the master's program, I haven't even been accepted yet. I'm honestly just nervous about that, because I ain't ready. But uh like, it's crazy, because I don't feel like I've given myself enough bedside time. But at the same time, it's so crazy in Arkansas to even get bedside hours, because it's mainly geared towards the COVID units. I don't get to do anything else but COVID. Like, and my ratios are out of this. It's crazy here. Y'all don't want to ever come here and be a nurse. Trust me, just don't do it. Um, but yeah, that's really all I wanted to get on and say. I wanted to clarify what I had said, because I did not want it to come across that I was trying to be like, oh, we should just be clinical teachers and not teach didactic, because you have to have didactic for students to learn before they even get into clinical.
True.
You were right about that.
We appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and clarifying that for me, because I didn't went down a whole rabbit hole.
Yes, baby, I had to come on here and say something now.
We appreciate it.
All
All right,
right,
Peter.
thank you.
Thank you. You have a good night.
You
Peter
too.
said, can't look, listen, and feel potassium 6 or 7, right? Didactic. So he was just kind of piggybacking off what we were saying, right? You have to know how to apply it. You said, Mimi says, because the white nurse that advocates isn't usually seen as aggressive or difficult. We reading old comments now, trying to get caught up.
You got a point.
That's exactly right. We got robot nurses coming. Yes, we do. I think I've actually seen some of them.
That video where the robot nurse quit, I know I watched it 10 times.
Yes, that was funny.
So hard, robot nurse quit. I was like, oh,
that's what it is.
I said, no, when the robot quit and walk out, it's just done.
They over it.
Done.
Maybe everyone asks themselves, how do we fix the problem with a white nurse? Instead, if she's the problem, right? We had mentioned that earlier before you came on. We had said something like that. We're like, oh no, a lot of times when they say, well, we don't see X, Y, and Z. When you don't see it, it's because it's you. That's the reason why you don't see it. You said I've seen experience in nursing. Hey, is it King Noni? Hey, how are you?
The fact that you can't go get I see your OB outside the hospital is absurd. Also true.
Teaching is an art and a skill. Respect you. It sure is, because I'm telling you, I have a true passion. Dr. Ray knows I do have a passion for teaching. That's my thing, right? I could talk to you all day long about some education, and because that was instilled in me. The education is your ticket, not everybody's ticket. But where I grew up, how I grew up, education was my ticket. For somebody, it may be a vocational. For somebody, it may be military. For somebody, it may be, a personal entrepreneurial business. But for me, education was my ticket. And even if you're not going into formal college education, you still got to read. You still got to learn, reading takes you places too. People don't like to read that, don't like to do that either. So,
nursing school has to marry both what I learned in lecturing can apply to clinical. That's true. Music City. 100 for entrepreneurs. The most wealthiest people are entrepreneurs. Most businesses fail, but y'all probably knew that already. But I'm just in terms of just generalized wealth in the U.S. The wealthiest people are entrepreneurs.
Nina says, I'm loving this whole life. Thank you so much, Nina, for joining us, especially on our new platform. Thank you all so much for joining us on our new platform, because we finally made it to 1,000. Thanks to y'all. So we could do that. We just organized a conference on allyship on an allyship bias. You know what? That would actually be good.
Mm-hmm.
That would be good.
That's a good idea.
That actually is good. Adrian, that would be great. That actually
Adrian
would be
ways to bring people together. I like that.
She does. And if you bring some food involved with it, then you can get more people too. You know, you say, okay, we're gonna have a
It
conference
has
with
wine. Oh gosh, they come in droves. You tell me you got wine.
then just feed them. I'll be there. All right, y'all. We've been on here for a little over 2 hours. Thank you all so much for joining us on our live tonight. This is our first live from our new platform. We will be coming live at the same intervals about every 2 weeks or so. Coming live from our new platform, just trying to build this platform up for the most part. So I thank you all for coming on our live. You have any parting words, Dr. Ray?
No. This was it was fun. Our next goal, we're trying to get to 5K. Want to grow our account, try to spread the word. So like and share, and also y'all help us out. If there's any kind of content that y'all want to see, let us know. Send us a DM or put it in the comments under any video. If it's any topics that you want to know more about, you want to know our perspective. Maybe we can get a trend going to talk about things that you're interested in. We would love to do that and interact as well. Can you hear me?
Anybody in here who's yeah, you can't hear me?
I
You
couldn't.
can't hear
I
me?
got you now.
Can you
I
now?
got you
Okay.
now. I can hear you.
Anybody else? Okay. Anybody else? I was simply saying, so they probably couldn't hear me either. I was simply saying that if you're new here, follow us here on Nursing Dynamics on here and on IG for one. Number two, if you happen to definitely share our page with any video that you happen to like, share our page with whoever, new nursing students, new nurses, any of the like. We also, if you go to our link tree, you go to our bio, you'll see the link tree at the top, and you will see our Amazon storefront. There's a whole lot of categories in the Amazon storefront, but specifically we're talking about nursing essentials. So anybody who, if you want to know, anybody in nursing school who wants to know, what books do y'all recommend for NCLEX? What books do y'all recommend for next year? What books do you recommend for this? For the,
we get so many
it's all on there. All on there, and then you can go through our Amazon storefront and get it. But until the next time, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.